Everyone, and thank you for joining the meeting to review the proposed amendment to the corporate bylaws related to the formation of certain advisory committees. My name is Christina Osborne. I work in ISO Stakeholder Engagement Group. I will be facilitating the meeting today, and I also have Dan Schonkweiler on the line. He is the Assistant General Counsel of Corporate and Litigation. He will be presenting. And then also from the ISO, Burton Gross from Legal and Emily Hughes from External Affairs are on the line to provide support for any questions that we receive. So the presentation that we're going to be reviewing today and the amended bylaws are available on the Western EIM Governance Review Committee webpage. We are recording the call today, and we will post the video file at that same location. Just a reminder to please request permission from the ISO before reprinting any related transcriptions. So we only have 3 content slides to go through. So what we'll do is Dan will go ahead and go through those slides, and we'll open it up for questions after that time. And I will provide instructions for how to enter the question queue when we're ready to take questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Dan Schonkweiler.
Thank you, Christina. Let's go ahead to the second slide. So this stakeholder process seeks feedback on a proposed amendment to the ISO's corporate bylaws. This amendment was proposed by the EIM governing body at its meeting of September 8th. They were, at the time, considering red lines, proposed changes to ISO governance documents to implement Part 2 of the Governance Review Committee's proposal for EIM governance. So these were changes to the bylaws and the charter for EIM governance and the guidance document. And those changes, the Part 2 proposal of the Governance Review Committee, concerned the delegation of authority to the governing body in the new joint authority model and several process issues around it. The EIM governing body they essentially approved those changes. They recommended, they didn't have decisional authority over it, but they recommended to the board that it approve those changes. And in addition to that, the EIM governing body also recommended this amendment to the corporate bylaws. So let's go to the next slide and look at it. The amendment would add a requirement about advisory committees to the Board of Governors. So advisory committees are one of the ways that the board, set up in the bylaws, the board may discharge its duties. The board can rely on management, lawyers, independent accountants. There's a set of rules in the bylaws. And an additional resource are advisory committees. And the current text of the rule about advisory committees is in Article 5, Section 2. I'm not going to read it. The text is up here on the slide, but essentially it says that 2/3 of the governors in office can appoint an advisory committee that could include governors, that is, members of the board, or non-governors, or a mixture. And the advisory committees don't act for the corporation, but they can advise the Board of Governors. So let's go to the next slide. The EIM governing body would keep all that text, and they would add one additional requirement, which I'm going to read. It's any advisory committee to address matters related to joint authority issues or to the governance of the energy imbalance market, currently or as it may evolve, including the joint authority established under Article 4, shall be jointly established by the board and the EIM governing body by approval of 2/3 of the member of each body then in office. Essentially what this does, it means that in order to appoint an advisory committee about these subjects, about EIM governance, about the joint authority that was just adopted, the board would need the concurrence of the EIM governing body. Let's go to the next slide. Actually, let's leave it there. Let's go back, because if there's questions, they're going to be about that text. So, but I'll open it up to, if that's my presentation. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Try to answer them.
Yes, so if you want to ask a question verbally and you logged into WebEx, you're going to select the hand icon above the chat window. If you just dialed into the meeting, you're going to press #2 on your telephone keypad, or you're welcome to send your questions to all panelists in the chat. And we'll just give it a minute or so. Michelle, you can let me know if anybody raises their hand.
Yep. So far, I don't see anybody with their hand raised, Christina.
Okay. I don't see anybody. I don't see any questions in the chat. And that is all we have to present.
Well, Christina, we could talk about next steps. Let's.
Sure. Yeah. So if you do have a question, you can enter the queue, but I'll go ahead and review the next steps. So we are, if you do want to submit written comments on the proposed amendment to the bylaws, those are due by close of business, October 14th. We do have a comments template out on the EIM Governance Review Committee webpage at this link. We are proposing to take the amended bylaws to the ISO Board of Governors for decision in early November, sorry about that. And then, of course, if you have any questions after this meeting, you're welcome to send those to ISO Stakeholder Affairs. But Dan, do you want to add anything?
That's nothing. Nope. That's it.
Okay. Well, I don't see anybody in the queue or any questions in the chat, so thank you all for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.
There is one question. There was one question in the queue. Matt had a question.
Thank you. Good. Glad you caught that.
That's okay. Let me go ahead and unmute him for you. Oh, did he put his hand down? Oh, no, there he is. Okay, so go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Don't forget to unmute yourself, Matt.
Matt, don't forget to unmute your phone or device, sir.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Matt.
Yeah, I think he hasn't unmuted. Chris, Matt, you can also put your question in the chat.
Yes. Hopefully he can hear us. Let me send them a chat.
All right. It seems that Matt has lowered his hand, but again, Matt, you can send a chat question as well, or you can try raising your hand with the raise hand icon again.
I just sent him a note in the chat. We'll see if he wants to send it. Maybe he changed his mind. Well, okay. Sorry if you couldn't connect, Matt. Feel free to reach out to me at the email listed here on the slide, and I can always forward it to you. Oops. There is a question. He said, yes, sorry, my question was whether the language specifically included EDAM governance. I believe it refers to EIM.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand the question. The language just refers, let's go back to the previous slide, or 2 slides, Christina, just to put the language up. The language does not include EDAM, but it says it refers to the energy imbalance market currently or as it may evolve. And as I understand that language, it's meant to include proposed governance changes for EDAM. So in other words, to select an advisory committee, if that were necessary, about EDAM governance, the board would need assuming this bylaw, this proposed amendment is implemented, the board would need the concurrence of the EIM governing body. And I say if that were necessary because there's already a governance review committee in place that was appointed with the concurrence of the EIM governing body already, and so that raises some issues that I'm not in a position to sort out, but that's the reason for my qualification.
Great. Okay. Yep. She said, thanks, Dan. I think Matt Lacar from PG&E responded, yeah, thanks, Dan. I think that answered my question. Note that EDAM and EIM may evolve to have separate footprints and therefore separate governance. Just a comment from Matt, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
So any other questions before we conclude today?
I don't see any additional questions on the line, Christina.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. Greatly appreciate it. And we'll give you 45 minutes back in your day. So thank you. Have a great afternoon.